is Shaden Attia, and I'm a writing and communication professor at Fanshawe College and the language assessor at the Cross Cultural Learner Center. So today my topic is English instructors in the TESOL job market. Mainly, I'm focusing on turning challenges into opportunities through agency. So for the presentation, I'll give you a general background on the study, and then I'll talk a little bit about the choice of context and theory. After that, I'll talk also about the research gap, and then I'll dive into the findings of the research question, mainly focusing on the changes and opportunities in the TESOL job market, and I'll also talk a little bit about the challenges, mainly instructors' counter stories, and then at the end, I'll share some study implications. So as for this study, it is a comparative study comparing the hiring criteria in both Canada and the United Arab Emirates. I mainly focused on higher education, so mainly focusing on universities and colleges. And my targeted participants were program administrators and English instructors who spoke English as an additional language. And I use a qualitative methodology, mainly utilizing journal reflections, interviews, questionnaires, and an analysis of job ads. And due to the critical nature of the study, I use critical race theory and intersectionality. And as for the choice of topic, mainly I was interested in the topic because facing a discrimination in the UAE due to me being a non-native English speaker. However, then when I read in the literature and with discussions with colleagues and friends, I was even more interested in the topic, and that's why I dedicated 4 years of my life for this topic for my PhD. Okay, so when it comes to the choice of topic, there were mainly two reasons why I chose Canada and the United Arab Emirates. The first reason was related to the continuous need of English instructors in both contexts. In Canada, mainly due to the increasing number of immigrants, and in the UAE due to the number of the reliance on foreign workers, which represents around 80% of the whole population. The second reason was me being familiar and having experience working in both countries, which offered me access to a certain extent there. As for the research gap, so to my knowledge, there are no known studies that explored English instructors and program administrators in the job market and compared their views. Also, no known studies that compared Canada and the United Arab Emirates. And finally, no known studies that investigated opportunities and challenges facing instructors in the United Arab Emirates. So I mainly investigated 3 research questions. The first one was focusing on the hiring criteria, and the second was related to what affects administrators' hiring decisions, and the question that I'll be focusing on in this presentation is the third one, which is related to the factors that shape and influence the experiences of English instructors in the TESOL job market, and also the counter storytelling that can be found in their experiences related to the dominant narrative in the field. So for the choice of theory, I decided on critical race theory and intersectionality. So according to Yoso, so critical race theory is a framework that can be used to theorize, examine, and challenge the ways race and racism both implicitly and explicitly impact on social structures, practices, and discourse. So the reason for using critical race theory was that counter storytelling is one of the key tenets of critical race theory. And mainly counter storytelling is all about centralizing the stories of the minorities. And I wanted to centralize the stories of English instructors compared to program administrators mainly. And for the intersectionality, so the term itself was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a very famous critical race theorist. And Gilborn states that intersectionality is focused on how multiple forms of inequality and identity interrelated in different contexts and over time. As for the rationale for using intersectionality, intersectionality allows for the inclusion of an unlimited number of variables, and I wanted to include many variables related to instructors. So that's related to their nativeness, their gender, their nationality, and many other forms. And that's why I decided on using intersectionality in addition to critical race theory. As for the literature review, so I'll be mainly focusing on two points, which are globalization and discrimination in the TESOL job market. So as we know that globalization gave people access, so you can travel, you can work in different places, but this access will differ from one person to the other. So we don't all have equal access to different places. So, Safari and Razmudru 2016 mentioned that globalization and English are closely connected as globalization assisted in the spread of English language and consequently the spread of the language facilitated and escalated the process of globalization. Also, Bourdieu and Thompson 1991 highlighted that languages and power are closely connected and political control is reflected in the idea of creating a single linguistic community. So mainly, it's related to how, for example, if you think of how English became so important, for example, back in my home country, if you speak English, you're considered part of the elite. You are given access to many places that other people don't have access to if you speak only Arabic. So it mainly gives you extra privileges. And this form of political domination is mirrored in many fields, and one of them can be seen in the field of education. The second point that I wanted to highlight was related to English language teaching and discrimination. Moda 2006 explained that racialization is inevitably salient in English language teaching. And because the spread of the English language across the globe was historically connected to the international political power of white people, English and whiteness are thornily intertwined. And also you can see how there are specific forms of English that are more accepted than other forms. So if you take a look at, for example, vernacular English or English that is spoken by a non-native speaker, and for example, an African American compared to the standard forms or mainstream English form, you can see the difference between those and how it affects the individual and their opportunities, whether that's for in the job market and also in other avenues. So for my research question, mainly I am focusing on factors that shape and influence the experiences of instructors in both contexts and what counter storytelling can be found and mainly, okay. So the key discussion points and findings that I'll be focusing on in the presentation will be focused on changes and challenges that shape and the experiences of instructors and how instructors faced and handled these issues and how they counteracted the dominant narrative. And in order to answer this research question, I utilized data from instructors' interviews and also journal reflections written by the instructors and finally, some data from program administrators' interviews. So during the interviews, instructors and program administrators reflected on different changes in the TESOL job market. And mainly in the United Arab Emirates, they spoke about the use of the term native and native-like. So previously, in the previous years, the word native was used in most of the job ads. However, now you can see a shift from native to native-like. And mainly some of the instructors mentioned that this shift highlights more inclusivity of people who speak English as an additional language. And I was able to see the shift when I was analyzing job ads. However, you can never be certain if this, like the word itself being put in the ads, it means inclusivity or it mainly just like you put it there so that you can look good. Because many of the job ads now, they have the EDI statements at the end. Previously, they didn't have those, so it will be contradictory if we only want natives from the US, Canada, and then we're inclusive to people from different backgrounds. So they never know that kind of stuff. Very complicated. And the second point that was actually mentioned by one of the program administrators in the United Arab Emirates was related to degree inflation. And she mainly said that suddenly a master's degree is not good enough and you have to have a PhD. And she actually mentioned that her opportunities in the UAE were limited due to her having only a master's and not having a PhD. Okay, that doesn't want to move. Let's run one more time. That's so it's yeah. Okay, let's. Yeah, the whole thing doesn't want to work. Listen. maybe I can stop sharing.
Present.
Yeah, we can maybe like stop sharing and then we can share it again. Thank you so much. Okay. Other changes that were noticed were related to COVID-19, and mainly in the job ads, and also the interviewees mentioned that now technology has become an essential thing that all the program administrators are looking for. Even though it is not mentioned among the requirements, however, it is strongly supported that you actually know how to use Zoom and different portals. And another change was related to the numbers of students and instructors. And of course, during the time of COVID, international students weren't able to travel. So for this reason, the numbers of students declined, and then the number of instructors declined because they started getting like fired because there were no students, so no job opportunities. And the last point was related to hiring dynamics. So mainly this is a quote by one of the program administrators in Canada. And she mentioned that before you were trying to like ask the interviewees to kind of sell themselves, now they come with their own demands. She was mainly referring to one of the instructors refusing the job because he wasn't paid for parking and he didn't have the chance to teach online. Okay, so but at least finally teachers are, trying their best having some agency so that they can have a job that's comfortable for them. And when it comes to some of the gatekeepers, so these were some of the points that they mentioned, mainly related to the cost of getting TESOL certification and also getting equivalency in the United Arab Emirates. Another point was related mainly to Canada, related to having connections and how many of the people who immigrated to Canada feel that it is more important to have connections than actually have like a lot of these super fancy qualifications. Also, another part was related to the job opportunities, how there weren't many, and they were so competitive, and also the pay was very low. And finally, the final point was related to discrimination. So that was related to many different points. And the quote that I have for you here was said by one of the program administrators. He was mainly reflecting on how some of the students in the organization didn't like the teacher because she was a Muslim, she was wearing a hijab, and she had an accent, so they weren't really convinced of her English language abilities. And how instructors face the challenges. So first of all, they went through the accreditation and they proved themselves. They used non-nativeness as a tool. So they would go into classes and they tell their students, I am a non-native and English is not my first language. And also they said that they try to use connections to their benefit. So for example, using symposiums like this or conferences to be able to connect with people. And also, they tried to focus on the positive aspect. And this was one of the quotes that one of the instructors in Canada mentioned, reflecting on her experience teaching in Canada, how the experience was phenomenal, eye opening, and wholesome. And finally, being attentive, where these instructors started refusing job offers, and also they started making special requests and demanding to work online. And for the implications, mainly for program administrators and employers, they are encouraged to offer employment protection and insurance, fair compensation, and flexible work conditions, and also clear and inclusive hiring criteria. As for the part of TESOL organizations, they should offer financial support for those who are unable to get the accreditation. Also, offer express certification streams and waiving certification for qualified instructors. And also, instructors have their part in this whole thing. So they should try and continue to create connections in the field, continue being agentive, and also challenge the native non-native dichotomy. And I'll leave you with these questions, just food for thought, simply related to the equivalency and how we can support English instructors and counteract the challenges in the job market. And thank you. And questions? Here are the references, just in case like you're really looking forward to this. So here are also the references. And okay, if you have any questions, I am here.